to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Late but never. It is the BJ Show. I am Brad Hildebrand, an American. That is John Combest, a conservative Republican. Good morning, John.
I love that you're continuing your meme from last week, Brad. Your very original and not overdone for decades trope of I'm an American. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm an American.
True, John. True, John. Matter of fact, we'll get into that a little bit later. That is John Combest. Every single day of his life for the past 23 years, he's put together this extensive list of all the important things you need to know about the state of Missouri. Kind of like the Drudge Report for Missouri, right, John?
Yeah, that's quite a compliment. Thank you, Brad.
He has dozens of items on his report every single day. But what we do is we start off the morning show with this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he counts down John Combest's top 3 of the entire johncombest.com site. And we start with...
In third place,
a piece from Fox 2 St. Louis. At the top of this hour, Brad, we heard from national Fox News about the continued mourning of 31-year-old Charlie Kirk after his passing. Fox 2 in St. Louis went to the most local of young Republican clubs. And that would not be St. Louis area young Republicans, but Washington University College Republicans. St. Louis young Republicans are really for the whole region, you know. But WashU College Republicans are for campus. They're members of the Missouri Federation of College Republicans. And they interviewed a woman named Ella Bruno. She's the president of the Washington University College Republicans. She said of Charlie Kirk, he made it almost cool to be conservative again. He was very confident, very outspoken, and that's something we don't see nowadays. It's almost not acceptable in this generation to be right-leaning or to have conservative values. But he said, no, it's okay to love your country. It's okay to be patriotic. Miss Bruno had a few other quotes, and then the story wraps up with her saying, I would never wish upon my worst enemy what happened to Charlie. It doesn't matter what political ideology you are. Political violence has no place in this country. And she was asked how this will change anything that conservatives and Republicans do on the WashU campus. She ended with, I think this is only going to ignite us further. I think this is only going to ignite us to further our mission, to further dialogue across differences. So the area continues to mourn Charlie Kirk. Brad, on social media, I saw a number of vigils across the state, honorary, I guess, what's the way to call it? I guess it wouldn't be a vigil, but I guess it would just be in memoriam, memorial tributes. That's the right way to say it. Across the state, both in our region, in Springfield, down in Kansas City. I didn't see a lot of mainstream media coverage of it, but I did see it on social media. So we continue to mourn Charlie Kirk, Brad.
John, can I ask you a question? And this is just hypothetical.
Sure.
Would Charlie Kirk consider himself an American?
No, I think he would probably consider himself a Martian, maybe, Brad. What's the point of your leading question?
Nothing, John. Move on. Were you done with that one?
Yeah, we sure are.
Number 2.
In third place,
wanted to include this piece from Bryce Gray of the Post-Dispatch because it's a follow-up to something that you and I have discussed on and off for the last 4 weeks. And you certainly have a strong opinion on these topics, Brad. And I wonder if you'll be consistent in your approach to this particular issue. Bryce Gray's headline, Jefferson County Bitcoin mine is built, but some residents are worried. And then, quote, sketchy at best, unquote. Now, Brad, usually, as you know, I don't include news about county government or city government. But in this case, this piece involving Jefferson County government actually includes a final piece that is subject to state approval. So I did include it today. And I think it's relevant for the top 3 because you've been outspoken against people who have the cave syndrome, citizens against virtually everything, which is an offshoot of NIMBY, not in my backyard, that whole approach to people might embrace change, they just don't want it in their neighborhood. And in this case, Jefferson County officials have approved what is a Bitcoin mine. And without getting into the minutia, because I don't understand the minutia that well, Bitcoin is created through a series of complex mathematical computations that are hard to do, that necessarily limit the production of Bitcoin on a blockchain. That's probably the most concise way I could describe it at my amateur level. And these Bitcoin mines require a great deal of energy. You've referenced that before on this show, Brad. And Bryce points out that Jefferson County officials have approved the zoning for a gentleman in hematite off a quiet gravel road in Jefferson County, has a new mining facility, the Bitcoin mining facility, but some residents aren't crazy about it. One guy named Dave Hill, he's a Crystal City resident. He has friends who live near the project, and he says, talking about Bitcoin mines, they're sketchy at best and use tremendous amounts of power. Those things, they suck up a lot of juice. So it seems, Brad, that a gentleman wants to be able to put a Bitcoin mine in. He has some other operations, I believe, in Iowa. So he's been involved in this industry for quite a while. And it seems like folks aren't crazy about the fact that you're going to have a giant energy sucking, quote unquote, project in Jefferson County. I will point out that this site sits near Highway P. Bryce says that it's next to a Missouri National Guard armory, large power lines, and an Ameren substation, hinting at Bitcoin's significant energy requirements. And Brad, earlier I mentioned that there's still one final piece of state approval. Here's what Bryce writes. The National Guard has given a preliminary okay to the project, but still must grant the project an easement as the final piece of approval through state officials. So the way I see this, Brad, unless I'm missing something here, everyone quoted in Bryce's story doesn't like this mine. It seems like because it uses a lot of energy, and maybe because they don't really understand what Bitcoin is. If you put a lead mine somewhere in Jefferson County, you could understand what it's going to do. But if you have Bitcoin there, who the heck knows what a Bitcoin is? This seems like a little bit of cave and a little bit of NIMBY.
You want my opinion on this, John?
I do.
You know, what's interesting about this, my son, my middle son, Blake, who is the computer science and electrical engineering graduate from Mizzou, double major, two very hard topics. Yes, he got those smarts from his mother, not his father. He talked about this a long time ago. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, I had some computers. We were no longer using the radio station, and he was trying to assemble as many computers as he could. And I think when he finally got to the point where he realized that the scale of computing you need to make any money at all with this is pretty large. But most of these Bitcoin mining operations are relatively small, not like the data center they were proposing out in St. Charles. And quite a few of them end up being built in shipping containers. You know, the Connex boxes.
I didn't know that, Brad.
Yeah, that seems to be a favorite thing. What they do is they rack them up, put racks in them for like all the equipment. The equipment's all rack mounted, and they essentially put a couple, sort of like at our transmitter sites, these big monstrous air conditioners that are like they're almost like the kind you'd see on tractor trailers, for refrigerated kind of tractor trailers, kind of things like that. And that's typically what they are. Now, this guy may be doing it bigger than that, but I know I've seen several of them like this. And the reason they do it in the Connex boxes is because it becomes very modular. In other words, if you start making money at it, you just put in another box and you put in more computers inside of it. Now, I would assume the easement they're talking about for the National Guard is probably for the power lines, because I don't think they would need any kind of easement other than that. Maybe ingress, egress easement. Maybe I would imagine either getting in or getting out are power lines to go in there. But here we go again. It's not that big of a deal. And I think I know that area. I think I've been by that area before because I think I remember seeing that National Guard place. It's sort of out in the middle of nowhere, John. It's not like it's in Arnold, down the street from the IHOP or something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
it's
saying?
not like it would be a public eyesore.
Right. It's I don't know. It's funny you brought that up last week about Cave and the whole bit. It's just there was a time when, matter of fact, this is one of the problems I have with the crap transmitters. I don't know if I told you this or not. Ken Kenzie, the original owner of what was at that time KSLQ AM, built that in 1984, and they put zoning regulations in Warren County in 1985. So technically, what is now the crap transmitter site is unzoned. And that's part of my problem I keep having with issues with trying to get things done at the KSLQ or the crap transmitter site, because every time I go, well, it's not zoned. Well, hey, you know what? It's old. It's been around for a long time. It predates zoning. Sometimes I think the zoning thing just gets out of control. Can I say that, John? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can. You know what they should do for zoning? They should hire, I don't know, take a Warren County model and maybe hire an old guy that used to come from North County, and then he can be in charge of planning and zoning. We need more old North County men running things, Brad.
John.
And then they could spend 30 minutes having a nonsensical, meaningless conversation in the hallway instead of getting back to their desk and doing some work, right?
John. He's recalling. John is throwing a couple barbs at me about a recent meeting I had with the planning and zoning director in Warren County. But that we'll just leave that one alone. Are we ready for number one?
Yeah, let's do it, Brad.
The number one.
We, being Missouri political types, journalism types, social media observers, have sliced and diced and dissected this redistricting thing a million times over regarding what the maps are and what an affront to democracy we've seen. And it's really hard for journalists to come up with new angles on this because most of them, let's face it, aren't very creative. But I would point folks to two pieces over the weekend, two pieces over the weekend from really good reporters showing really creative approaches to the story. You won't be surprised, Brad, that the first one comes from Jason Rosenbaum at St. Louis Public Radio, and I have a link to that story up today. The other one came over the weekend from Austin Huguelet of the Post-Dispatch. We'll go in reverse order, and we will do Austin's piece first that appeared in the Post-Dispatch. His headline, "At Trump's call, Missouri Republicans do what hardliners wanted all along." And Austin goes back to 2022 and the original redistricting debate this decade and points out that members of, get ready to cry, Brad, Missouri's Freedom Caucus pushed for a 7-1 map. And not just members of the Missouri Freedom Caucus, but others that people would consider probably hardline conservatives, you could call them that. And they were defeated by, I guess you could call them more mainstream Republicans, if you want to be generous there. I think that's probably pretty fair to say, and got a 6-2 map rather than a 7-1 map. Starring in Austin's piece are both Democrats and Republicans praising none other than Bill Eigel, who was in the state Senate at the time and who is now running for St. Charles County Executive. And, Democrats like to point to Bill Eigel because he's a boogeyman. And they can say, this is exactly the kind of thing that Bill Eigel wanted. And they use him as a straw man, or maybe better as a boogeyman, to point to and say, gosh, this is just like a Bill Eigel map from 2022. And of course, Bill Eigel takes that as a compliment. So that's the first piece of the duo. And then a piece that I linked to today, Jason Rosenbaum writes a column called On the Trail. And his headline today, Missouri special session shatters norms and could lead to a nasty 2026 legislature. So Jason resists the urge to slice and dice the map, as he's done more than adequately over the last month or so. And Jason instead looks forward. What is this going to mean? Will anything get past the legislature in 2026? And a spoiler, Brad, It's not just going to be Republican versus Democrat, but there were some skirmishes in the last 96 hours among Republicans. Jason details those. I know we're coming up toward the end of the segment. We don't have a whole lot of time here, but one chairman of the Appropriations Committee, or I should say the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Lincoln Hough from Springfield, was relieved of his duties by Senator Cindy O'Loughlin. You know, she runs the Senate. She says it's just part of a normal secession plan. But Lincoln seems to suggest, no, Cindy's just kind of mad at me and is taking it down on me. So Jake Crozen of the Missouri Times has a piece up about that in the Whispering Gallery today. He has some information about that. So, Brad, two unique angles. One is, hey, let's give credit to that old Freedom Caucus from 2022. And another piece is looking forward into 2026.
Turn my microphone back on here. The interesting thing about this is you heard it live and on the air when we interviewed Bill Eigel and we gave him the Super Freedom Caucus test, and he flunked. So he may crow all about the Freedom Caucus, but he could not make it into the Super Freedom Caucus.
He could not. And Brad, did you fix the spelling on your own website yet?
John, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
I'm guessing you probably. I know that you're the height of execution, Brad, and follow through. So I'm sure you actually fixed that. An honorable mention as well this weekend to This Week in Missouri Politics, who had departing Missouri Attorney General, former Attorney General, Andrew Bailey as a host, Brad. That's a huge get. The day before he physically left to go to Washington, D.C., Andrew Bailey was on Scott Fawn's show talking about his time as Missouri AG, talking about what he expects from Catherine Hanaway, and a myriad of issues, Brad. It was pretty awesome.
Interesting because of the fact that I know from listening to 97.1, they lamented the fact that probably about a week before he announced he was going to degrade himself and go down in stature from being the Missouri Attorney General to be the assistant director of the
Co-deputy director,
co-deputy director of the FBI with that crazy radio guy Dan Bongino. He disappeared off the airways of 97.1. And I don't think they've had Catherine Hanaway on once. I mean, you know,
they have, yeah. And we talked about it last week on the show, and you made your punchline about having her take over for Andrew Bailey. So you're right. Yes, we have talked about it. Dedum Tots, Brad. We've discussed this many times on the show.
There's an empty office at 97.1 where Andrew Bailey used to live, and I guess Catherine isn't gonna show up at that office anymore. Is that what the deal is?
I know. And folks can go back to our August 29th edition, which is what Brad is referencing. That's when Bill Eigel was on the air and suggested that Andrew Bailey taking a spot as co-deputy director at the FBI was indeed a step down. That's what Brad's referencing. And then if you want to hear Brad's well-worn complaint against Josh Hawley and Andrew Bailey for making the sensible career choice and getting a higher office instead of staying mired in the muck of where they currently are, you can go back to August 19th, A Block, and you can hear Brad and I argue about that dead horse, Brad.
John, two bits here. First off, Bill Eigel, remember, Bill Eigel agreed with me about Andrew Bailey. Bill Eigel and I don't see much eye to eye, pardon the pun, but we did agree on that. Now, and second thing, I thought about this. It's funny you bring that up because I've been thinking about this for about a week and a half, and I've never brought it up on the air. Here's my analogy to the Josh Hawley, to the Andrew Bailey situations where they depart their office much too early, okay?
Yeah, what is it, Brad?
I think that when you become a candidate for an office and you are elected to that office, you essentially sign an agreement, not literally, but figuratively, sign an agreement with the public that you have their faith in doing that job. The public has essentially said, we, by voting for this guy, think that we have this guy, we've anointed this guy with this position, and as a contract, and once again, not a legal contract, but an ethical contract, we've given him our vote. We've approved him for this 4-year term. He needs to fulfill that term. John, your opinion?
Yeah, Brad. So Dedum Tots, we've discussed this many times on the show, and I don't know if I mentioned it 4 minutes ago, But on the August 29th edition with Bill Eigel, you repeated to Bill, as you look for his approval and his confirmation and this validation, you repeated your proposal that you've repeated several times leading up to the Bill Eigel interview, Brad. Yes, it's a very novel idea that you introduced last month.
John, and you see, you and I come from different perspectives on this. Is because of the fact that you're a corporate guy, and if a guy gets hired in, like when you were at Monsanto, if a guy gets hired in, and let's say he was an underling to you, he was below you,
and then you're happy about it, and you understand that normal people in society that don't want to stay stuck where they are and just complain about their life, they will take a promotion and they won't argue with it, Brad.
It's a little bit different because of the fact that when people vote for you, they're assuming you're going to fulfill your job of 2 or 4 years, whatever the term is. Okay.
You're right. And when Josh Hawley left his office to run for Senate, were Missouri voters so mad at him that they didn't elect him, Brad?
I was, because
because you don't count, and also you're mad that he didn't toss you a couple grand for advertising in 2018. And Brad, in 2024, did Missourians reelect Josh Hawley with the largest Senate margin in decades?
Well, who did he run against? That's the whole problem. He didn't run against.
Yeah, there you go. So don't answer the question, Brad. Evade it. And voters have a choice. And if you don't like a politician moving up and making a sensible choice, then punish them for it. So
well,
obviously, Brad, you were out of the mainstream.
I mean, obviously, who would want Crystal Quaid over Josh Hawley? I mean, that's the question right there.
Hey, at least he spells his name right on billboards. And Josh ran against Lucas Kuntz, Brad.
I was kidding, John.
Okay, there you go.
I was kidding because Crystal Quaid at least didn't injure a reporter.
That's true. That's a great fact, Brad.
Okay, people are going, what the hell is he talking about? Okay, but John knows exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Okay.
I think everybody that listens does.